Welcome to Intentional Aging for January 2023. Katherine Wieseman is here with us to tell us about the Feldenkrais Method. She is a Guild certified Feldenkrais practitioner who is based in Sequim, and I'm going to stop talking and turn things over to Katherine now. So welcome, Katherine, and thank you for being here with us today.
Okay, thanks for the welcome and welcome to everybody. Let me share my screen. I'm one of these people that believes in roadmaps to help. There we go. I'm trying to put some faces over on the side so that I don't take myself out of the screen for a moment. Because many of us are visual learners. So the PowerPoint slides that you'll see are just so you can kind of sense, oh, this is what she's talking about. It's not going to have a lot of text on it, but it's just a way of helping you pay attention, which is a big thing of what the Feldenkrais method is about. So I didn't call my topic improving the Feldenkrais method, because most people will go, Feldenkrais? Is it a religious organization? Felden what? So the important thing about this Feldenkrais method is that it's really about improving your life experience and improving your well-being. So that's what I called my topic, and that the Feldenkrais method could help you to do that. So then the question is, well, what is it? And the best way to understand it is to experience it. So after just a kind of like quick little opening, we're actually going to go into a movement experience and allow some time afterward, for you to share if you'd like. So I like this slide because I think it encapsulates sort of the big picture of what this system of learning is about. It is a system of learning. It's not a fix-it system. It's not a medical treatment program. It's a way of learning about yourself and discovering things about yourself that you might not have known, or that you once knew but you've forgotten as you have gone through your life. And much of what we think about ourselves is based on our beliefs. So if we can change our beliefs, then we can, sorry, my other laptop was giving me a message. If we can change our beliefs, then we can create possibilities for ourselves. So this is sort of what our program will kind of look like. I'll give you a little bit of an intro, take you into an experience, which will be the bulk of our time together, and then kind of finish off with questions, comments, thoughts that you might have. I'd like to share with you a quote from one of Moshe Feldenkrais's books. He called it The Elusive Obvious, was the name of the book. You may learn to make your life more as you wish it to be. Your dreams could become more precise, and who knows, they may even come true. Our actions largely depend on our heredity, on what we have been through in our lives, on the image we have formed of ourselves, on the physical, cultural, and social environments in which we have grown, and the ones in which we now function. So that is a context piece. And as I've shared, it's a learning system. It's oriented towards improvement, self-improvement, and wellness, and it uses movement as the tool. So you might say, why movement? I mean, there are lots of self-improvement systems out there, lots of programs about how to help you be well. Why movement? What's the difference between movement in a Feldenkrais experience and movement in an exercise class, or movement in yoga, or movement in Tai Chi or Qigong, or maybe some of the other movement kinds of things that you do? So in Feldenkrais experiences, we move in ways to pay attention to what we're doing, to pay attention to how a movement is easy or how a movement could be challenging or confusing or even seem impossible at that moment in time. And to try and figure out through movement this puzzle of how we're helping or hindering ourselves in doing what it is that we want to do. We always hold an intention for something, but do we truly enact our intention? And so we use movement in the Feldenkrais experience to kind of go there. We don't use talk. We use movement because movement is a signal of life. You stop moving, you're no longer alive. Breathing is movement. When you stop breathing, you're no longer alive. When you're conceived, as you go through that phase of life in the womb, you're moving. So movement is something that has preoccupied our existence forever, from the beginning until the end. And by changing movement patterns, you can create options and possibilities for yourselves. And it usually doesn't stick just to the movement and the physical world. So you might find as you go through your movement experience today that emotions come up for you. Like, oh, I really want to do this. Oh my God, I got to achieve this. Well, there's an emotion that's wrapped up in that. Sometimes movements bring forth joy, they bring forth sadness. Who knows what it might trigger? A memory might come up for you. So movement is tied in with the other aspects of our beingness, the way we sense ourselves, the way we feel, our emotions, the way we think about ourselves. Okay. All right. So with that, suppose that you wanted to come and work with a Feldenkrais practitioner in a one-on-one situation rather than a class. We don't tend to ask these kinds of questions, all of these questions in a class per se, but they might be asked. And so these questions give you a sense of, oh my gosh, this Feldenkrais thing is something that really is elusive. Okay, it's kind of hard to comprehend. So I might ask you, are you moving in a way that you like the way that it feels? When and where in your life do you experience enjoyment and pleasure? How would you like to experience yourself? Are you living the life you want to live at this moment, given any conditions that you might be experiencing? Are you having the life that you want to live, in other words, in simple terms? Are you open to bringing deeper attention to yourself on a daily basis? So those are some really big picture questions, aren't they? To ponder. And maybe keep those in mind as you go through the experience too. Kind of put them in a back filing cabinet drawer. All right. So a couple of things before we go into our movement experience. One is self-care. So regardless of anything that I might say as an instruction for movement, you are responsible for your well-being. So be kind and gentle towards yourself. If something you do a movement, like if I were to say, lift your arm, and just thinking that, some of you probably would have gone, right, all the way up. And some of you might go, well, you might have gone, did she even raise her hand? Okay. And some people might say, I can't do that. I've had so many injuries that I can't raise my arms. Okay? So be kind towards yourself. Be gentle with yourself. If I say something and you go, I have no clue what you want me to do, or I think that's going to hurt, then don't do it. Shut your eyes. Imagine yourself doing it. Because when you imagine a movement, you fire the exact same neural pathways, right? Nerves, brain, nerves, muscles that create the movement, just on a smaller scale. So if I were to say, lift your arm, So watch this shoulder really carefully, and that line on the wall might be of benefit at this point. If I were to say, lift your arm, right? And I go, oh, I can't do it. I guess I'll just imagine it. Right? Did you see my shoulder move ever so slightly? This is one way some people do it. So when we imagine, we actually create minimal movement, and that's not the way I do it, but it is a typical way that people lift their arm, because they'll go like this first, and then they'll go like that, right? Okay, right? All right, another one, sensation. Pay attention to sensations inside of yourself. So if I did this movement, my sensation right now is that I am really, really tight someplace in my body, and I am holding my breath, right? Okay. So that's paying attention to sensation. Where do you feel tightness? What happens to your breathing? And how do you pay the most attention to your sensations? You go slowly, and you do a lot less than your maximum, because that gives you your brain and the whole of yourself time to take in the experience and to make sense out of it. We call it integrate, but it's a making sense process. Okay. Attitude. Oh, this one's huge, right? Be curious. I hope that when you were a child, at some point in your life, you were a curious being, and that the world kind of fascinated you and you wanted to explore, right? Go back to that. Bring that into the experience. We often say, bring the child in you back out again, because it's in childhood that we tend to be those things, curious and explorative, and not bound by, I got to do this, I have to achieve, I have to get to my goal. Those are kind of like adult messages that we have taken on through life. I got to be successful. So allow yourself to be curious, playful, and explorative. Allow yourself just to observe yourself. Is that possible for you to allow and observe? And finally, intention. It's always about your internal journey. It is not about the movement. It's about what happens as you move. That's a big thing. So I will lead you through with oral instructions and experience, and you do what you can, and you watch yourself in the ways that you can at this moment in time. Good? Yeah? Okay, I can see 4 people on my screen at the same time, and that's about it. All right. So we're about to enter our personal world of organic learning. Organic meaning this is the way that we learned when nobody told us how to learn. So it's an experience sitting in your chair, preferably a chair that doesn't swivel, because then by sitting in a chair that turns, you'll add rotation movement in without even knowing that you're doing it. So if you need a moment to find yourself a chair that doesn't swivel, that would be great. I'm trying to bring as many people into my screen as I can. Let's see here. Okay, and if your chair has a firm seat, that's better than a super squishy seat, because a firm seat allows you to more clearly sense how you're sitting into your chair. Okay, but if you need squishy, that's fine, because this is your first, for some of you, it may be your very first experience. So whatever kind of chair seat you need, and make sure your feet are touching the floor. That's another big one. People that have short legs, right? The legs kind of hang in space and swing. Well, you need to be in a way sitting that your feet are touching the floor. That's important. And so if you need to get yourself some books or something like that to put under your feet, totally fine. I actually have a little wood box that somebody made for me because most of my clients have short legs, and my table is set for me, which means their feet swing in the air. So I bring the floor to their feet. Okay. All right. Now, just notice how you're sitting in your chair for starters. Are you sitting against the chair back, leaned back? Are you sitting leaning forward? Right? You're doing whatever is your habit. And so as we go through this, you'll discover some things that are your habits and go, huh, I didn't know that was my habit. Oh, well, how do I feel about that? Do I want to do something about that? Do I want to let it be? Okay. All right. And so is everybody ready to go? Okay. And if you feel that you don't want to do the experience, that's okay. But I would certainly encourage you to try and do it in your imagination, if nothing else. You know, like if you're somewhere and you're like, oh, people are going to watch me and they're going to wonder what I'm doing, or this is too unusual, I'm not sure, you know, do I want to do it? Yeah, I'll invite you to at least try it in your imagination, which means you might, and most likely, I will invite you to close your eyes because that allows you to sense yourself better. Okay. So bring yourself forwards in your chair. In other words, sitting towards the front edge, simply because, excuse me, that allows you a little bit more movement possibility. If you're sitting pegged against your chair back, then there's certain movements that are going to be constrained or limited, right? Because your back is against something. Okay. So sitting forwards in your chair. If I were to say to you, move the trunk of your body more forwards, but no scooting over your chair to do it. Where you're sitting on yourself and in your chair stays where it is. But bring the trunk of your body forwards. Just see how you do that. There are lots of strategies. And then bring yourself back. So as I look around, I can see that people are tilting their body forward, right? The head is going forwards in space to bring the trunk of the body forward, and the head is going back. That's one way. And it's a typical way that people choose. Yeah, tilting. The next time that you tilt, those of you that are tilting, observe your breathing and notice, do you hold your breath at any moment when you start tilting forwards? Somebody's nodding their head. So holding your breath is your body's way of telling you, I'm working really hard not to fall over. It's your body's way of telling you, you're working really hard to do what it is that you're trying to do. So we pay attention to breath a lot. And one of the elements is, whatever you do, if your breathing is uninterrupted and it's free, great. But if you start holding your breath, then think about what you're doing, okay? So can you think of another way that you might bring the trunk of yourself forwards? Is there another option in your brain in this movement puzzle? Ah, I see somebody that's moving forward by lifting their chest up in the air and they're actually getting taller. That's another way, right? When I say move your trunk forward, what are you thinking of as your trunk? Yeah, somebody's pointing from shoulders all the way down to pelvis, right? Okay, so if all you wanted to do was the shoulders to the pelvis, your head wouldn't have to go forward if you could find another way to do it. Yeah. Okay. So here we are, we're beginning to ask questions that are like, do I have options or don't I? The more options you have, the more possibilities you can live from. All right, go ahead and let that one go for a minute. And just sit and notice, are you sitting differently in some way? Just because of the little bit that we've done. I see some heads nodding. Wow, cool. Okay, so now if I were to invite you to move the trunk of yourself backward, what would you do? I see some tilting strategies, like the whole of you is like a tree trunk, right? It's the opposite of going forward. Now I see somebody as they're going backwards, all of a sudden their chin is dropping to their chest. That's another way of going backwards. You can also do a combination, right? You could tilt and bring your chin to your chest, right? These are some different options. And each one of us has a preference, but we can create options. All right. Go ahead and let go of that and just sit. Notice your breathing. How do you know that you are breathing at this moment in time? Where do you don't know? Yeah, I know. It's an interesting question, isn't it? So, you know, what do doctors or people sometimes do? They put the hand in front of the nose or the mouth if it's open to see if they can feel a flow of air, right? Because air can come in through these openings depending on what's open. Yeah. But some people can't feel it here, but maybe they feel something going down into their chest, or maybe they feel their chest get bigger or smaller, or their belly get bigger or smaller, right? As air goes in or goes out. But if your breath is really shallow, the trunk of yourself might not move that much. No? So how do you know that you're breathing? Because breathing is a sign of being alive. Yeah? And as you breathe, from the time that you take air in to let air out, does that feel long? Does it feel short? Is it the same amount of time taking air in as taking air out, letting air out, or is there a difference? Some people take more time to take air in, less time to let air out. For some people, it's the other way around. For some people, it's even. Some people pause between in and out or between out and in. What's your way at this moment? Because your breathing will change depending on what you're doing. Right? If all of a sudden you started moving around a lot, your breathing would change. Okay, yeah, go ahead and let go of paying attention to breathing. All right, you're sitting in your chair. Now, if I invite you to move the trunk of yourself sideways. So we went forward, we went backward. Another way that we can move our trunks is sideways. So just see, what side do you go to and how do you do it? Some people are going left. My goodness. For what I can see, it looks like almost everybody is going left first. Interesting. Yeah. Ah, 1% saying, no, 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 I'm unique, I'm different, I'm going to the right. Okay. Yeah. Now, if you were to look at the screen as I am, you will see that there are many ways that people are doing this, right? Some people are taking their ear, right, towards the shoulder that they're going to and sort of doing a little bit of a bend on the side, and that's it. Some people are completely leaning over. One person even has a hand up in the air, right, as part of this, right? All of those are possibilities. Okay. So notice your breathing as you go to the side. How far do you go? If you're going pretty far, you probably get to a point where your breathing changes and you know that's the point beyond which I don't want to go, because if I go, I might fall over. Yeah? So just feel as you do this, does something tighten inside of yourself? Does it feel like an easy movement, a hard movement? And then try and go to the other side. And what's your experience of taking your trunk to the other side? Okay, and then come back. And just let yourself sit and check in with yourself. How are you sitting now? Is something different? Either in the way you sense yourself in sitting, or you go, oh, I just noticed my shoulders. I don't usually pay attention to my shoulders. So it's like all of a sudden, maybe you're becoming aware of some part of yourself that a moment ago wasn't there for you. All right, so you're sitting in your chair. Let's see what happens if you turn to one side. Notice which side you go to and how you go there. I see some lefts, I see some rights. I see heads moving. In some cases, I see heads and shoulders traveling together. So just see, okay, you went to one side, go to the other side. What's the difference? Is there a difference in the way that you feel, like ease or confidence or whatever emotion might come up? And then come back. So these movements of forwards and backwards and sideways and around, those are key movements, fundamental movements in life, right? That we need on a daily basis in some way. And if we don't have them, like if you don't have the ability just to turn yourself while you're sitting and your feet stay in the same place, if you were standing, what would you do? You'd go feet, 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 right? You'd step around yourself to get there, right? Okay, because there's something about your ability to twist within yourself that you have forgotten or that might not be possible because of something that you're living with, right? Okay, now, between forwards and backwards and sideways and around, there's some place when you sit that maybe you sit in a way that you feel super, super light. You don't feel the weight of your head. Maybe you don't even feel the weight of your body. It's as if you have gone weightless. Now, that may or may not be possible, but see what you can find. Is there a place that is not forwards, however forwards, whatever that means, not backwards, not sideways, not turned, but a place that is in neutral, in the middle, that is in perfect balance between all of these directions? And if you find something like that for you at this moment in time, we might label the way that you have organized yourself as I am now in a state of balance within myself, dynamic balance, because balance is never fixed. You're always moving in some way. Remember the story of the one I heard was at Buckingham Palace. The guards at Buckingham Palace were supposed to stand completely unmoving, and all of a sudden they started dropping to the ground because our nervous system is not built to be completely static. So the balance system got all screwed up. So now they have movements, micro movements that they do. They have the changing back and forth. You know, all soldiers now don't stand at perfect attention for hours and hours on end. Okay. All right. So here you are, you're sitting in your chair. Has anybody noticed their feet in contact with the ground in anything that we've done? I haven't called your attention to it. My guess is probably it wasn't in the forefront of your attention. Maybe a little bit. All right. So let's bring your attention down to how your feet are relating to the floor underneath you. Because we live in a world of gravity, and gravity is always drawing us into the earth. And our skeleton, our bones, give us a way of supporting ourselves from the ground up. So we have this balance going on. So how are your feet relating to the floor? And you're going, what does that even mean? So you have two legs that are attached to your 2 feet, and they come into the trunk of your body. Can you notice if through your right leg and your right foot, you are giving the same amount of weight into the floor as through your left leg and your left foot? Is it equal or is it unequal? Because for many people it's unequal, but some of you are saying, no, it's equal for me. Lucky you. It's not equal for me. Yeah. And then it's when you do this, you can get a really good idea if you take your shoes off. But for now, leave them on. But at some point on your own, yeah, maybe when you get ready to go to bed or something like that, give your attention to your feet without your shoes on, because you'll get more sensation that way. So our feet have toes at the front and a heel in the back, an inside edge where we have an arch, and an outside edge. So in between those, that outline, we put pressure into the floor. Where are you putting more of your pressure? Even in your shoe, you can tell this. Is it more towards the heel? Can you feel any of your toes touching the floor or your inside shoe sole? What about the ball of your foot? And then, can you tell, are you putting more weight towards the outside edges of your feet in your shoes or towards the inside edges? Towards the inside. And all of that, how you relate your feet to the floor, and you might be doing one thing with one leg and something else with the other leg. Who knows? But all of that affects your balance. Yeah? Just as an aside, okay? All right. Okay. For a moment, go ahead and come to standing. Just give yourself a breather from sitting and just stand up for a moment. Now, did you have to struggle in some way to get out of your chair? Did you hold your breath when you got out of your chair? Did you even notice your breathing when you got out of your chair? Or even when you go back into your chair, you can do it both directions. One of the hardest things as life goes on sometimes is just getting out of a chair and back into the chair, right? For many reasons. Okay, I just was using the get up and get down as a way of just giving you a pause, right? But here I throw in some awareness questions for you along the way. All right. So come to sit back in your chair with your feet on the floor. Settle yourself in. Preferably not leaning against your chair back. When we do rests, you can sit back in your chair, but through the invitations to move, come forwards a little bit so that you don't have any restriction on your backside. And notice, are you sitting in exactly the same way before you stood up? Is something different that you can tell? And if your answer to the question is, I don't know, that is a perfectly legitimate answer. There's yes, no, I don't know, I'm not sure, I haven't got a clue as to what you're even asking me to pay attention to. Okay. All right. So very slowly, very gently with yourself, bend one earlobe, one ear, closer to the shoulder on that side of your body, and notice which side you pick to go to. And some of you are feeling, where's my earlobe, right? To know where it is. Yeah. So see, we lose sight of, where are the pieces of ourselves? And so to help us get through that blind spot, sometimes we have to touch ourselves to know. Some people might even touch their shoulders to be sure, okay, what do I mean? What does shoulder mean to me? Because it means different things to each of us. So bring one ear closer to the shoulder on that side of the body and only go to the same direction for a moment. And notice, did you go right or did you go left? So you've basically bent your head to one side, haven't you? And then you are bringing it back up over your spine again. Did you go as far as you could go? Or did you just try the very beginning of the movement? Is it possible to do a really small movement, not to go as far as you can go? Just a little bit, enough that you know you have moved whichever ear it is to that shoulder, whichever shoulder it is. And as you're doing this and you're bending your head and bending the spine of your neck, how far down into the trunk of your body can you feel this simple action of bringing an ear closer to the shoulder? And does it change the way that you sit? Do you come to sit more on the side that you're bending to, or the other side? And then, let yourself go and then let yourself come back. And when you come back, just let yourself really observe, how am I sitting now? Because you might find that each time you bring an ear closer to the shoulder and you come back, that it changes the way that you sit. Okay. The next time that same side, you bring your ear closer to your shoulder, whichever side you're doing. Notice the trunk of your body, the sides of your body. Does one side seem like it gets shorter and the ribs on that side get squished together? There's less space between them. And on the other side, you feel like you got longer, like your ribs spaced out. There's more gap between them. And if you stay on that side a little bit, notice your breathing. Does the air go more easily into one side or the other side? And if you have a short side and a long side, is the air going in more easily into the short side or into the long side? And come back. And then come back. And go ahead and pause for a moment and just let yourself breathe and sense, how am I breathing now? How am I sitting now? Am I sitting more on one side or the other side because of this bending sideways movement that you just did? Or for some of you, you might find, wow, I was sitting unevenly, but this evened me out. And some people might say it hasn't made a difference whatsoever. Or I don't know if it's made a difference or not. Okay, now go to the other side. Take the other ear towards the other shoulder and back. And are you going as far as you can, or are you going enough that you know that you've brought that ear towards that shoulder? And as you bring that ear towards that shoulder, does it change the way you're sitting in your chair? Do you come to put more weight on the side that you're bending towards, or the other side, or not change the way you're sitting in your chair, or you don't know if it's changing the way you're sitting in your chair? How far down into your spine, into the trunk of yourself, can you feel this action of bringing an ear closer to the shoulder? Is it easier to bring the air into the side, one side or the other side? Okay, go ahead and come back. And just let yourself sit for a moment. And notice how you're sitting. Notice your breathing. You might find that it gets a little bit easier to breathe because you've all of a sudden created some movement in the trunk of your body, and so your ribs are a little bit more free to move. So as you take air in, they can move. As you let air out, they can move. You're not quite as stiff, you might say. You say, oh, I don't feel as stiff as I was before. That's a possibility. Okay, go ahead and sit back in a way that's just comfortable for yourself. And you can let go of like, oh, trying to pay attention to anything, just let yourself be. So in Feldenkrais, we call these the rest times. And these rest times are there to help your brain and your nervous system make sense of the experience. So sometimes, and this is a personal experience, I've been in a movement lesson and the instructions are such that I get to a point where I go, there is no way that I can do what you're asking me to do. I haven't got a clue how to organize me to do that. And so I just lie there, because a lot of times our lessons are lying down. I just lie there and go, okay, how do I feel about that? Well, I want to do it. Or, no, it's okay. I can give myself permission to accept who I am at this moment in time. And we're in the rest period, and it may go on for 30 seconds, a minute, maybe 2 minutes. And then after the rest, we come back to whatever position we were in, and we're given the instruction, go back to the movement that you were just trying. And I go, okay. And guess what? I just did the movement. It was impossible before the rest. Now, how is that possible? Right? That rest time gave my brain an opportunity and my nervous system an opportunity to put the puzzle together. I don't know how it did it. I don't care how it did it. It doesn't matter how it did it. All I know is that I was able to move in a way that I wasn't before. And I'm like, yeah, joy, enjoyment, pleasure, right? It feels good. And that's something that we call improvement. It's what we call, hey, well-being, when we feel good about ourselves. Okay. All right. So now our rest period is done. My little storytelling is finished. Come back to sit more towards the front of your chair. So one end of your spine has the ball of your head, which is pretty weighty, especially if you sit like this. Did you know that the more forward your head tilts, the heavier your head becomes in terms of how your body has to keep your head balanced on top of yourself? And your muscles have to work a lot harder because they're trying to keep you from doing that, right? Face plant. Yeah. Okay. And we don't usually have to worry about this part because as people age, they go this way, don't they? They go forwards. Yeah. All right. At the other end of your spine is your pelvis. It's what you're sitting through. Okay. So we're going to go to the other end of your spine now. All right. So first off, do you know, I don't have a skeleton here, but your pelvis is bone that's solid and bone that comes around and has like two little shelves that you sit on. And if you've ever done yoga, they call them the sits bones. Yeah. But if you want to know how you're sitting, you can take, see if I can do this. You can take your hands, right? You'll pretend that I'm sitting in a chair and you can feel, right, where your bones might be, either one hand or two hands, and kind of like if it's okay and you don't have, you know, arthritis in your fingers, and put your hands underneath you just briefly to feel where your bones are that you're sitting on. And if you have to move the trunk of your body, right, you'll feel where you're sitting, right? So sometimes it's easier one hand at a time, right, than both at the same time. But that just gives you a sense of, oh, okay, that's what I'm sitting on within myself. That's a part of my pelvis. Okay. It's part of my hips. All right, go ahead and take your hands out. Now, is it possible for you to lift your right hip away from your chair seat enough that I could come with a ruler, you know, old-fashioned ruler, and slide it underneath you, and then you put your pelvis back down and you're sitting on that ruler. And we'll make it a nice flat ruler, not one with ridges all over the place. Is that possible for you? Right? And some people are going, uh-huh, and some people are going, uh-uh, right? Yeah. Yeah. So if I were to say, enough that I could slide a sheet of paper underneath of you. Yeah. I'll bet the people that are saying like this, I'll bet if you did this, I could get that ruler underneath you, right? The tilting strategy, but that's the one that compromises your balance, isn't it? Yeah. But it is a possibility, isn't it? Okay. All right. Let's go to the other side. I'll come and I'll stand on your other side with my little ruler. Can you lift your right hip enough that I might be able to slide a ruler underneath you or a piece of paper underneath you, and then you sit back down again? Remind me, what time do I need to finish?
Right around 12:25 is perfectly
Okay, good enough.
fine.
So we're in good stead. Okay. I'm like so involved in watching. It was like, oh my God, what was the time frame again? All right. Okay. So you've discovered something perhaps that you already knew about yourself. Well, then it wouldn't be a discovery. You're reminding yourself of something that you knew, or maybe some of you discovered something about yourself. Okay. Trying to lift a side of the hip or a side of the pelvis can be challenging as we get older, unless we do it like that and like that, right? Okay. All right. So let's see. We're all going to go the same direction. Okay. Please bring your right hand on top of your head, if that's possible for you, so that the palm of your hand is resting on what you consider to be the top of your head. And if this is not possible for you because you have shoulder issues, then just bring it up to wherever you can, right? Or imagine, right? So your hand is here, your elbow is somewhere out to the side. It might be in front out to the side or back out or straight out, wherever it is fine, okay? But your hand is on your head. Draw your right elbow downwards towards your right hip. Keeping the hand fixed, you've glued your hand to the top of your head. It can't slide, has to stay in that exact same spot. Draw your right elbow down towards your right hip a little bit, down the side of yourself, not in front, down the side. And then come back. And notice as you do that movement with your arm in this configuration, what happens to the way that you sit? Does something change? Yeah. Did one side happen to lift up or just release its pressure, its weight ever so slightly? Yeah. Which side is it? Is it the right side or is it the left side for you? The left, some people are pointing left. Okay. All right. Now go ahead and bring your hand down. Bring your other hand up and put it on top of your head. And draw that elbow, your left elbow, down the left side, sideways, in the direction of your left hip. Is that changing the way that you're sitting? Is it perchance lifting the right hip ever so slightly? Changing the weight ever so slightly? Now, were you one of those people that said lifting my right hip was impossible? And did you just lift your right hip a little bit? Ah, I see some smiles. Go ahead and come back and sit. Well, guess what? Okay, now let's see what happens. Is it possible to lift your right hip ever so slightly? I see it happening. On some people that were like, no, I don't think I can do this. I see the right side shifting in some way. I don't see your pelvis. I'm watching your head and your shoulders because they're telling me what you're doing with your pelvis. So, miracle of miracles, huh? Okay, go ahead and put your left hand back on your head or your right hand, whichever one it was that allowed you to lift your right hip just a little bit. And go ahead and draw that elbow sideways down your body in the direction of that hip. Notice that when you do that, isn't the ear coming closer to the shoulder? Isn't your spine all through the trunk of yourself? Aren't you changing the shape of your spine and turning it into a little bit of a curve? Now, come back, keeping your hand up there. And the next time that you go, first, before you even go, take your attention down to your feet. In your shoes on the floor. Notice how you're weighting through your legs and draw your elbow down and notice, does something happen with your feet into the floor through your legs? Is there a way that you might actually be able to use a foot, a little pressure to help you bring that elbow, which one do I have, whichever one it is that's up, to help you bring that elbow down the side of your body? Can you use your leg and a foot to help you bend your spine? Bend the whole of yourself. That means your head, through your neck, through the trunk of your body, through your ribs, into your pelvis, through your leg bones, all the way down to your feet and to the floor. And then come back and just let yourself sit. And notice how you're sitting. Is something different for you? The experience of sitting, is it different? Do you like this sensation that you have inside of yourself? Not necessarily. Does it feel unfamiliar to you? Ah, that might be why you go, I don't think I like it. Because when we hit unfamiliar zones, sometimes we go, I'm not so sure I like that. Stay with that unfamiliar feeling. Can you give yourself permission to try to accept the unfamiliar? And just, we're going to sit for a moment because the unfamiliar might slowly become familiar. That sense of discomfort might disappear. So you can see that emotion is tied with movement right away, isn't it? Everything about who we are and how we present ourselves to the world has an emotional component, right? When you feel confident, you're up in the world. When you're happy, you're up in the world. When you're afraid, you're down and curled in, you're protecting yourself, right? When you're hesitant, that can take on different looks, yeah? All right. Now, just come, if you're not forward in your chair already, come forward a little bit to where you have been sitting, you know, sitting towards the front edge of your chair, not tilting forwards to be there, but scooting your bottom, your pelvis forwards. And let's go back to that very first movement that we did. Remember the one where you took one ear towards a shoulder? Go ahead and do that now and see, what is that experience like? Is it the same? I'm going to guess that you feel it a lot more through yourself. That you might even be aware that, hey, when I draw that ear towards the shoulder on the same side, somehow or other it's coming through me and it is changing the way that I'm sitting, and I can track that now. It can be part of my awareness, that relationship of where my head is and where my pelvis is in space. Some of you might say, wow, for the same amount of effort that I put in, I went farther. Or no matter how far I went, the whole thing just felt easier. Go to the other side. Let your other ear approach its shoulder. And just observe. And come back. Just a few times. Is there something about the movement now that's different? The pattern of way you're organizing yourself to draw that ear closer? Is your breathing a little bit freer through the whole thing? Coming back? Now, here's a really interesting question. As you draw that ear to that shoulder, does your face stay soft or do you tense now? I'm watching one person and her face now is very different now as she brings an ear to the shoulder compared to the very beginning. In the very beginning, there was like this expression of what I might call strain, but now it's not there anymore. That's a big change. You might not think of it that way and go ahead and come back, but it is a big change because when our face is tight, our mouth is tight, our eyes are tight. When our mouth is tight, right, we might clench our teeth. We might break our teeth. We might have mouth pain. The dentist might tell you you have TMJ and you need a night guard, right? Okay. And the muscles of your mouth connect back to the back of your neck. And so tight mouths sometimes are accompanied with headaches, tension headaches. And if around your eyes, you're working really hard and you're straining, those muscles connect to the back too. And so when you work really hard to see, your vision's not as great. And sometimes you have headaches just because of that. And we can get, certain kinds of tension headaches we can get rid of in Feldenkrais just with movements of the eye lessons. That's what I do when I get a tension headache. I do eye movement lessons and my headache goes away. Cool. Makes me very happy. I like myself a lot better. My well-being is much higher in that situation. Okay. So, now where am I with time? Okay. So did you find that doing that very first movement now was a different experience than the first time that you did it? Yeah. Different in a way that you feel like there was improvement for you and a better sense of well-being? Yeah. Okay. You know why? Because you brought more of yourself on board. You did not just limit the movement from here to here. So I can do that same movement. And this is where a lot of people start, and I do too, because it's my habit also, that I'll go, right? And you don't see any movement here, do you? It's all from here up. But when I remember that I have a whole body, and when I carry movement and I integrate it through me, my head is so free, I can move it all over the place, right? But if I do this, I can't move it, can I? You can see the strain, yeah? My whole body is one team working together. Now, it doesn't mean copy me, right? I have my patterns, I have my ways. You have your patterns, you have your ways. The most important thing is for you to know what your ways are, what your patterns are, and to go, do I want to change it? Am I willing to pay attention and put the time in to be mindful about that and to take care of myself? Do I want more choices? And if some of those answers are yes, then that's where the Feldenkrais method can help you. Yeah. And so in the Feldenkrais method, which is this system of learning, we have two ways of doing it. One is this way that you're experiencing in a group together, where my voice kind of leads you through an experience. And I've been giving you, I've been doing some physical movements with you. That doesn't always happen. but I find that I do, and I intersperse a little bit of context in. That's my way. Yeah. And then the other way is one-on-one. And obviously one-on-one ways cost a whole heck of a lot more than class ways. But in the one-on-one way, we my hands are actually on you. And we are working together. So when you had your hand here, you know, I might have my one hand up here, and I might have a hand on your ribs, feeling what's going on your ribs, on the sides of you. And if I see you doing this, I might go, ah, she's holding herself here. Can we find an entry point, right? Where just the gentle touch, my nervous system is talking to your nervous system, and all of a sudden you do something like that and you go, whoa, what just happened? Oh my God, that feels so different. I like that lightness. I like the way that feels. And then I'll take my hands off and I might say, can you find that yourself? But my touch has brought your awareness to something that you didn't know about yourself without ever saying a word. Because our world of words sometimes limits our experience. Okay. So let me go back to my slideshow. So what we have just done is an awareness through movement lesson in side bending. Now you can do that exact same lesson sitting like this little girl is sitting, right? But I chose not to do it that way for many reasons. One is that's a hard position to be in for your first experience. For some people, it's not even possible. But look at what this little girl is doing. Do you see a short side? Do you see a side where her ribs are probably closer together? And do you see the other side that's longer from shoulder to pelvis, where the ribs are probably spaced apart? This is what you were exploring in the way that we did it. You can do it lying in your bed, right? You can do it on your belly. You can do it lying on your side. There's so many ways, so many positions that you could be in to find how you might bend sideways and to bring it through you, to integrate it through the whole of yourself. This was just one experience. Now, the other thing that you might wonder, in case somebody asks this question, why did we do this? Everybody go put their hand back on top of their head again. Okay, so notice that your hand here has made a triangle, hasn't it? Okay. Now, when you bring this elbow down to the side, notice what happens in your spine. So go ahead, again, draw it down the side of yourself. Does your spine go into a curve in some way? A forward C, a backward C, a J, and I don't know what, but something, right? And come back. Now, take your hand off your head. And if you draw an ear to the shoulder, you're liable just to do it through your neck, right? And your trunk, your spine didn't really move. When you do this, it takes the neck out of the picture. It forces the movement down lower because this is now fixed. So the only way you can draw your elbow down is to move your spine and the trunk of yourself. Otherwise, you'd just be doing this, right? And I said, no, glued. So we call this a constraint because no matter what you're trying to do, it forces the movement someplace else that you might not have been moving, so you can bring it through the whole of yourself. Okay. So in case somebody was curious about why did we do that, that's why, right? And I picked it then because some of you said, no, it's not possible for me to lift one side of my hip. And I knew as soon as we did this, something was going to happen in your pelvis. And those of you that had that, no, nothing's happening, went, oh, something happened, right? Okay. All right, let me pull that back down again. So the person that's behind, the person that's behind all of this, his name was Moshe Feldenkrais, born in 1980, died in 1984. This is him in the middle, a picture that was taken in Germany. He is somebody who was born in what is now the Ukraine, in Kharkov of all places, one of the cities that's been in the forefront in the Ukraine-Russia war. He was Jew, and at the time frame when he was a young teenager, the pogroms were happening, and Jews were being prosecuted. So he walked all the way to what we now know as Israel, and sort of set up life there. Laborer, finally got to go to school, went to university. He got a doctorate in science. He went to Paris, France, just in front of World War II, and was working with the Curie labs in Paris. So he was a very high-powered scientist. He also got involved in judo as a very high-level martial artist in judo. He's one of the people that brought judo, was involved in the growth of judo in Western Europe. And then because he was Jewish, when the Nazis came in, he had to flee Paris and ended up in the United Kingdom, continued with science work, but in the process of all of this had really started exploring lots of other realms: psychology, biomechanics, anatomy, physiology, just the gamut. And that's why he is a Renaissance man. And he had a soccer injury, knee injury. And at that point in time, there were no such things as knee replacements. And so he had two options. One, bed rest and hope that it got better. Two, maybe an operation, and maybe that wouldn't work and he could be worse off. So he chose the bed rest, so to speak, the do nothing. And in the process, really got into trying to improve himself using movement awareness and to find ways that he could walk again with the conditions that he was experiencing, and was able to do that. And that is sort of one of the roots of what we call now the Feldenkrais method. So that's just a little bit about him as an individual. Okay. So questions, comments, thoughts. I'm going to stop my share. Anybody that, feel free to ask questions, or if something comes up later on. I think Karina might have sent out my email. If not, maybe Karina could do that. I mean, feel free to ask me any questions that you'd like, on your own time. An example, some people that come have had fusions of vertebrae. Mm-hmm. And so what tends to happen when a part of your spine gets fused is you move a lot more above and below the fusion. And so you have to find ways to distribute that, right, further through you, because that one part that is fused you're not going to get to bend that anymore. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you have to find ways to move above, around that. Yeah. And so pay attention, build your awareness, come to a class, keep paying attention. Remember we were doing forwards, backwards, sideways, turn, just to ascertain who you were. But doing the movements, any kind of movements, micro and slowly, so that you can identify where you set up your own resistances. And then don't go past the resistance. So like if I were to try, and I know that turning this way, that's not me, but as an example, turning this way is going to be really hard for me. And this is as far as I can go, that would be considered my max. I don't want to try and push past that, because I'm sending the message to myself, I'm not taking care of myself. Mm-hmm. I would go under that resistance point and come back. And in that way, you might find that, that somatic part, that non-words part of yourself goes, she's taking care of me. She's respecting me. I don't have to hold on to whatever it is that I'm holding on to anymore.
Thank you to Katherine. And for more information, We always have our list of resources, and as usual, I will be emailing all this with hyperlinks in the email so you can just click and go straight to things. And I'll get that email out within the next week. And that'll give you all these details, and I will include Catherine's email and web address again.
Yeah,
So you have,
the website also has information and some links on it that might be different from these, just to self-educate.
yes, and I should have put your website on this page.
I didn't think of that.
I knew it would be in the email going out, but yeah, I didn't think of putting it on the slide. So my apologies there.
No problem.
So you all will receive an email from me. And then, as I mentioned earlier, when Adele made her brilliant suggestion, she was psychic. Our next intentional aging event in February will be on the 21st here on Zoom again at 11 a.m. And we will have a presentation by Kristen DeCoux, who is a professional organizer here on the Olympic Peninsula. Her business is called Modern Refresh. She's a certified KonMari consultant for any fans of Marie Kondo's book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. She will be here to share ideas for organizing and refreshing your living spaces to fit your lifestyle and your life stage. And she'll share strategies for letting go of the stuff that might be holding you back. We all can kind of get started on decluttering and such, and then you kind of hit a wall. And so she'll have some tips for how to get yourself going again. So that I'm looking forward to next month also. Feel like we're getting off to a really fun start here for 2023. And as an extra note, our book discussion of Lisa Genova's book, Remember, that we were going to discuss in December, will now be our March intentional aging program. So delaying it a little bit. The weather had other plans for us in December. So copies of the book are still available for anyone who didn't have a chance to read it. You can get those at the branches. If you're on the West End, you'll want to give the branch a call or email me and I'll send a copy out there. Otherwise at Port Angeles and Sequim, we have some book kits there so you can pick a copy up. So the delay, I guess, will give us a chance to see what we all remember about Remember. And I would like to say that this is the last time I will make a joke about that, but I gotta be honest, it's gonna happen again. Thanks to everyone for being here. Thanks to Catherine, and thanks to the Knowles Friends of the Library organizations